But disasters of the scale that we're talking about and that we were using in our scenarios, people found incredibly hard to imagine.
They did indeed. I've said for a long time that disasters go beyond knowledge, skills, experience and imagination. And the thing about reality is that reality is far more creative and imaginative than we are. We don't get close to reality if we only use facts, figures, data and evidence and modelling. For example, we have to be innovative, we have to be creative, we have to use our brains, use our consciousness to think in imagination, ways of imagination about what is possible and what is the thing we actually don't want to see but could possibly manifest. And that introduces fear and resistance, because it's a space of non-coping, it's a space of great vulnerability, because you're painting pictures where people cannot possibly get their head around the scenario and what to do about it.
People were shocked as.
But that is the nature of reality. Reality is about uncertainty, ambiguity and complexity. That is the nature of reality. And we try and change that by controlling things and trying to bring certainty into our lives. But that's not how life actually works. So this uncertainty, ambiguity and complexity is how reality operates. And you can take that to an extreme level of disaster, complex disaster risk, cascading and compounding disasters, and that's also reality. And we've got to try and either get a head around it or develop skills and competencies and approaches and mentalities to deal with those things when they turn up. That requires a lot of effort.
How do you think institutions these days are faring with being able to re-engineer, redevelop themselves so that they're going to be able to deal with the sort of issues and the vulnerabilities in the future?
So I think there's initially enthusiasm, but it doesn't last very long, and the enthusiasm goes in cycles and it follows the funding. So the money turns up after the disaster. Everyone gets enthusiastic.
Yeah.
The money dries up because other priorities take precedence. The enthusiasm drops. The next disaster turns up. So this is a long-term cyclical problem. But look, I think certainly my understanding of the sector is that we helped to introduce. We didn't do it exclusively, but we helped to introduce this notion of catastrophe, catastrophic disasters being
in the warning system now.
Catastrophic events being inevitable. They don't have to be disastrous, but the events, the intensity, the event, it can be catastrophic level. We introduced that, or helped to reintroduce that concept. It started a few years before us, but it got suppressed quite significantly politically. We put it back on the table, and it stayed on the table.
After Black Saturday.
After Black Saturday.
Yeah, it was in the warnings arrangements. Yeah.
So I think we now have a rich and liberal conversation about catastrophe, and so we should, because it does open up the mind to possibilities, as tragic as they may be, and it gives us half a chance to either do something about it or to prepare for them in advance.
Yeah. There's a lot of events that have happened that have not resulted in the loss and the harm.
Absolutely.
That happened before we started looking at systemic change.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Mark, what message would you like to send to the people who might be viewing us or listening to us today?
Don't be afraid to imagine, and don't be afraid to participate in complex conversations about the possibilities coming down the pathway, particularly around climate. And the risk reduction is critical, it's fundamental. I mean, I get back to this notion that if you're in public life, in public service or in service of others, that what binds us together is trust. So we have to uphold trust.
Do you think sometimes who to trust is a bit of a challenge?
I honestly so.
Yeah.
And I think public institutions particularly, that obligation never goes away. It's under attack from misinformation and disinformation, because our adversaries are our path. But the minute we lose sight of that non-harmfulness, we start to get into difficult spaces, particularly politically. It starts to get very trouble.
Care.
We forget to care, absolutely.
We'll choose not to.
We'll choose not to.
Mark Crosweller, you are a gem. Thank you so much.
You're welcome, Jill.
It's been a fabulous conversation. I think we probably could have gone on for a bit longer.
We probably could.
Yeah, but I'll let you go for now. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.